was a kid, I was living in the Lower East Side, and the first film that I really saw about India was Pate Panchali by Satyajit Ray. And I realized it was a film that was made by Indians, for the world, not through other cultures. And it brought me to learn about the rest of the world.
I think it's belittling to someone like the great Mr. Satyajit Ray to say हमको उनकी ये film पसंद थी. I think he's even beyond the films he's made. He's how to say, he's an institution for cinema, not only in this country, but across the world.
I find that whenever I need to be energized or re-inspired, I go back to his films along with other great directors like Rossellini and Visconti and others.
On Air India's Boeing 707, flight AI 1068, from New York, London, Frankfurt, Geneva, Cairo, and Bombay.
This man is a film director. He lives in India. Though his background is Indian, there are many Western influences in his work. Though his films are Indian, they have reached out to a worldwide audience. In them, a gallery of men and women depicts the shifts and conflicts of this century. The stories are of India. The human problems and emotions are universal.
কিন্তু অন্যান্য মাধ্যম ছেড়ে আপনি হঠাৎ চলচ্চিত্রকে আপনার প্রকাশের মাধ্যম হিসেবে কেন ভালো মনে করলেন যদি একটু বলেন?
প্রথমত একটা কথা বলতে চাই যে আমি অন্যান্য মাধ্যমগুলো কিন্তু সম্পূর্ণ ছাড়িনি। যেমন আমি ছবি এখনো আঁকি, আমার নিজের একটা পত্রিকা আছে সন্দেশ বলে, তার জন্য আমাকে রেগুলার ছবি আঁকতে হয়। তারপর আমি লিখছি, যেটা আপনি নিজেই বললেন, আমি গল্প লিখি এবং আমার নিজের ছবির জন্য আমার চিত্রনাট্য লিখতে হয়, সে কাজটাও করি। তাছাড়া গান বাজনা আমার শখ ছেলেবেলা থেকে, সঙ্গীত রচনাও আমাকে করতে হয়। ছবির জন্য আবার সঙ্গীত লিখি, তারপর বর্তমান ছবির জন্য গান লিখেছি, গানের কথা লিখেছি, গানের সুর দিয়েছি ইত্যাদি। আমি সত্যি বলতে কি, ছবি করার সঙ্গে সঙ্গে আমি অন্য কাজগুলো ছবি করার তাগিদেই কিছুটা, আর কিছুটা তার বাইরেও আমি চালিয়ে যাচ্ছি। ফিল্মটা বেছে নিয়েছি কেননা বিজ্ঞাপনের অফিসে আমি 10 বছর কাজ করেছিলাম, কাজটা আমার খুব ভালো লাগছিল না। আমি স্বাধীন শিল্পী হতে চেয়েছিলাম। অফিসে বসে, ডেস্কে বসে কাজ করার মানে সেখানে একজন বস আছেন, আর সেখানে মক্কেলরা আছে, তাদের কথাবার্তা শুনতে হয়, করতে হয়, আমার বেশি দিন ভালো লাগছিল না। কাজ হয়েছিল, এতে আমার উপকার হয়েছিল, আমি নানা রকম ব্যাপারের উৎসাহিত হয়ে পড়েছিলাম। অক্ষরের ব্যাপার, লেখার ব্যাপার, লিপির ব্যাপার, টাইপোগ্রাফির ব্যাপার, এইগুলো আমার তখন ইন্টারেস্ট হয়েছিল। তাছাড়া তখনই আমি সিগনেট প্রেসের সঙ্গে যুক্ত হয়েছিলাম, তাদের জন্য বইয়ের মলা টাকা, গল্পের জন্য ছবি আঁকা, এই কাজগুলো তখন সঙ্গে সঙ্গে বিজ্ঞাপনের সঙ্গে সঙ্গেই করতাম। কিন্তু ফিল্মে আমার প্রচন্ড উৎসাহ ছিল এবং সেটা ক্রমেই বাড়ছিল। এবং আরেকটা কারণ ছিল এই যে বাংলা ছবি দেখে মনে হতো ছবি আরো অনেক ভালো হতে পারে। খারাপ নেই তো, ঠিক না?
তাহলে এর একটা ওইখানে দিয়ে দিই, এর একটা ওইখানে দিই।
না আমার তো ওটা তো আজকে আসবেই না, ওখানটা ওখানে ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ডে কি আসছে দেখে চাইলে ওটা থেকে এটা টেবিলটা শর্টে আসছে না, আমি সরিয়ে নিচ্ছি।
সরিয়ে পিয়ানোটা এখানে থাকবে।
Actually, I was not a filmmaker before. I was a commercial artist, but I have always been very seriously interested in movies. And in 1947, I think, I read a very fine book, which I thought would make a good film. And so I wrote a script. And it was in 50, I think, that I started looking for a sponsor. I had my script, and I couldn't find a sponsor. So in 52, I think it took 1 year to find out that nobody would back me.
Financially?
Yes, financially, yes. And in 52, I and a few friends of mine managed to pool our resources and started shooting this film with our own money.
This is the film Pather Panchali that
Yes,
you're
this is-
discussing now.
Yes, yes.
When you started making films, Mr. Ray, did you feel anything, did you have a view about the state of cinema in India?
Well, we were certainly very strongly critical of Bengali films of that period. In fact, that's one of the things which we did at the Film Society. We were studying foreign films and we were having seminars and things on the Indian cinema of that period, and we were all very strongly critical. We found most of our stuff very false, unrealistic, shoddy, commercial in a bad way, and that sort of thing. We were very theatrical.
But when you decided to make a film, how did you go about writing a script for it?
I really started as a scriptwriter with my second film when I had more confidence. What I did was, you see, I had to go from door to various distributors and producers to tell them the story in order to interest them so that they would put up money. I did a book of drawings of the film, of frames,
Yes.
fairly elaborately done in wash, black and white. And I would tell them the story and at the same time show them the drawings. And this is what I had even when I started the film. The actors would be given their lines a week before shooting, and we had discussions with the crew, with my assistants, with my cameraman, so he knew the setups more or less, and we knew the trend of the story, we knew the structure of the story. Pather Panchali, there was really no script as such. There were notes and things like that, and I had it all in my head. I mean, there were notes for dialogue. Most of the dialogue came from the book. I didn't know how to write dialogue. I didn't have any confidence as a dialogue writer at that point. But fortunately, Bibhuti-Bhushan wrote very lifelike dialogue. ছবির জগতে খুব বেশি সংখ্যায় প্রতিভাবান ব্যক্তি ছিলেন না বলে আমার ধারণা, যেখানে সেই সব ছবির সঙ্গে বাইরের ছবির সঙ্গে তুলনা করা যেত। তখন মনে হয়েছিল যে একটা ছবি করা যাক না, দেখা যাক না, কেননা ফিল্ম নিয়ে আমি পড়াশোনা করছিলাম। আমার বিজ্ঞাপনের কাজের ফাঁকে ফাঁকে আমরা ফিল্ম সোসাইটি তৈরি করেছিলাম, ফিল্ম নিয়ে পড়াশোনা আরম্ভ করেছিলাম, ফিল্ম নিয়ে আলোচনা করতাম, সমালোচনা করতাম। কাজেই তারপরে আমি ফিল্মটায় গেলাম এবং প্রথম ছবিতে যখন এতটা সাফল্য অর্জন করা হলো সকলে মিলে পথের পাঁচালী, তখন তো ও লাইনটা ছাড়ার আর কোনো প্রশ্ন ওঠে না। Yes, I had a film at the festival. This is my latest one, Nayak, which means the hero. It's about a film star, a study of what sudden wealth and fame does to an ordinary middle-class young man. It got the prize for direction, so I think it went over quite well. People seem to enjoy it. It just happens that I have had a film every year in some festival or the other over the last 8 or 9 years. So I've been to Moscow, I've been to Berlin 4 times, been to Venice. My first film, Pather Panchali, the first part of the trilogy that I made, got a prize in Cannes. I didn't go that time because we had no money. And then when I made the second film, that was sent to Venice, and I was able to attend the festival. And that got the Grand Prix. And that has been a great help because I have a sort of a foreign market now, and quite a number of my films have played abroad, in Britain and the States. I've served on the jury at Berlin, in Moscow, in Brussels. The pace of the film, the very texture of the film is changing, and so there's a widening of thematic range. Along with it, a different mode of expression, which is dictated by the cutting and the use of the camera and lights. So I've been noticing really very deep and significant changes in the style of filmmaking. My roots...
In contrast to the flamboyant style of picture making common to India, Satyajit Ray works in a thoughtful, considered way. Every aspect of his production is planned, not always the case in Indian studios. From his actors, he seeks naturalness, authenticity, a total break from the high theatrical style of most Indian films.
তোমার ভাই যে রেটে কেস আসছে ভেবেছিলাম ব্যোমকেশের গোয়েন্দা কাহিনী লিখবো।
না, এবার ব্যোমকেশের গোয়েন্দা কাহিনী ছেড়ে একটা...
Mr. Ray is wonderful to work with because he is very patient. When taking the scenes, he would explain the situation and ask us to act the situation the way we wanted to do. That
Ray's musical genius finds its brilliant expression in the lyrics and tunes he composed for his films. His complete mastery of this art form is the culmination of a long family tradition.
I was born in a musical family. My grandfather, Upendra Kishore, was a composer, violinist. He played the flute, he played the bhagawaj. And on my mother's side, my mother's grandfather, Kalinaran Gupta, was a wonderful composer. And it so happens that on my mother's side, practically everyone is a natural singer. My grandmother could sing, and all her sisters could sing. My mother could sing. And my mother's sisters, brothers, and cousins were all natural singers. So I grew up in an atmosphere of music and singing, Rabindra Sangeet and Brahmo Sangeet. I have been exposed to Western classical music from a very early age. There were some records of classical music in my house. I don't know where they came from, but I had heard Beethoven's works and some other Western music from when I was a small boy. I had a gramophone, a toy gramophone, and some small records given to me as a birthday present, which consisted of all of it was Western music, waltzes, marches, and all that. So Western music has never been unfamiliar to me. I was exposed to it and I had heard it. Along with Bengali songs and Bengali music, I was listening to Western music of some kind or other. And it developed into a very serious interest when I was at school, towards the end, when I was 13, 14. I had a friend at school who came from a fairly well-to-do family, and he also got interested in Western music, and he started buying records, and it was in his house that I was able to listen to music of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, and others. So I got initiated very, very early when I was at school.
I think I was 4 or 5 years old when I was given a pygmy-phone as a birthday present. The pygmy-phone was a toy gramophone made by the Bell Telephone Company, and the tiny records that came with it had the sign of the bell on their mauve labels. The music was mostly waltzes and marches, Blue Danube, Over the Waves, Tipperary, Stars and Stripes, and so on. And they were my first introduction to Western music. Suppose there's a performance by Richter and a performance by Bismillah in 2 different theaters at the same time, and one has to make a choice between the 2. Now, if Richter were playing in different compositions, I'd certainly go to Bismillah. Indian music is what the performer makes it. It's true he has to play on the basis of certain set rules, but if he is a great musician, he can elaborate and improvise on that basis. In other words, he can compose while he performs and make great music. While with Western music, even a Richter can do nothing with what is basically a second-rate conception. I suppose one has to have a sort of a split personality to respond equally to Indian and Western classical music.
Number 5, 8. Madhava. ওই মধ্যমের উপর তোমার পঞ্চম পড়ে যাবে, কি করে হবে? হ্যাঁ, কি কোথায় দিচ্ছ? আমি নাম্বার 80 তো দেখছি আমি। রেডি বাবু?
স্লেট
আমি বলবো, হ্যাঁ আমি ইয়েস বলবো।
একটু শুকনো কাপড় দিলে পৌঁছে না বাবা,
জল থেকে যায় তো।
সাইলেন্স।
এটা মেনটেন হয় না, শুকনো কাপড় দিলে না।
ঠিক আছে, ছেড়ে দাও।
সাউন্ড দিয়ে নেবো।
হ্যাঁ, স্টার্ট সাউন্ড।
5/156 টেক 1।
কাট। ওকে, নিচে এসো। এখানে কি ওয়াইড অ্যাঙ্গেল দিয়ে ক্লোজ করে নেবো? 32 দিয়ে
ভালো। অফ।
দেখো, ক্যামেরা দেখো। দেখেছো? হয়তো আরো কাছে যেতে হবে আমার, বিগ ক্লোজ।
এই গালটা তো, হ্যাঁ এইটা ধরে দিলে হবে। এই যে
একটা বোমা ওর দিকে তাকাবি, আমি
চশমাটা একটু বাড়াই, একটু বাইরে স্ট্যাপ বাইরে
রুমা একটু এগিয়ে। প্যান খোলো, প্যান খোলো। টাইট।
এটা কত বড় ভুল করছি।
আসতে পারি দরজার দিকে, আরেকটু লেফট লুক। এই ঠিক আছে, ওকে ফর মি, লাভলি।
दाल
दाल आधा पाव घी
नॉन हल्दी
हल्दी
चम्मच
Do that slapping because it has been done with bangles already.
Oh, it's been done.
It makes a slightly different sound if you have bangles. Lovely, more sort of tinkly kind of sound. Lovely. That's those shouting. কি আমি দুটো গিরগিটি দেখেছি, বেশি দূরে যাওনি তো? তো খিদে পায়নি? না পাইনি করে ঘুরে যাও, আবার রওনা দাও। আমরা কিন্তু একটু পরেই খাবো, তুমি চলে এসো। আচ্ছা। Okay. You get ready now? That's the ball. Okay? Okay. Ready, take cover? Take cover? চলো না, সাইলেন্স, সাইলেন্স প্লিজ, সাইলেন্স। আমরা একটা রিহার্সাল নিচ্ছি। আচ্ছা, অ্যাকশন।
আমি দুটো গিরগিটি দেখেছি।
বেশি দূরে যাওনি তো?
না।
তোমার খিদে পায়নি?
না, পাইনি।
আমরা কিন্তু একটু পরেই খাবো, তুমি তাড়াতাড়ি চলে এসো।
শোনো বিট্টু, ওই দিকটা চলে যাও, ওই দিকে না, ওই দিকটা। হ্যাঁ, হাতটা ওইখানে তুললে দেখা যাবে, তাহলে গাছে ডাকা পড়ে যাবে। আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, একদম ঠিক আছে। আমি দুটো গিরগিটি দেখেছি, দুটোর উপর জোর। আচ্ছা
Tell me his name. Rolling. Justin. Go. Running. 9-4-6-3, take one. Action.
আমি দুটো গিরগিটি দেখাচ্ছি।
বেশি দূরে যাওনি তো?
না।
তোমার খিদে পায়নি?
না, পাইনি।
আমরা কিন্তু একটু পরেই খাবো, তুমি তাড়াতাড়ি চলে এসো।
কি আছে? ক্যামেরা দাও, দেখি।
জানি ওর কাছে শুনছো, আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, তাহলেও আমার মনে হয়
নেটটা ধরো তো, ধরেছিলে? করে দেখি, আমি দেখবার। এবার এক কাজ করো, কমিয়ে দাও লাইটটাকে।
এবার একটা আমি ক্যামেরাটা বসে যাই।
হ্যাঁ,
ক্যামেরাটা বসে আমি করবো।
এবার এই ওয়াচটাকে অফ করে একবার ফ্রন্টাল ওয়াচ করো।
ও বাবু, হ্যাঁ
কাটো।
ওটা কি পারবে তো?
হ্যাঁ, প্রেজেন্ট করো। আছে, ঠিক আছে।
ওকে, রেডি। একটা রিহার্সাল নিয়ে নি। One rehearsal, please.
Sing me the songs I delighted to hear.
The last time was fine. Let's try it. You, you're not actually reading the book, are you?
No.
You got it all by heart. Okay. No. I want to cheat your look a bit towards the left. Okay.
Yes.
That will be your cue. Good morning, Mr. Chaudhary. Good morning. How's your pupil doing? Ask her. She'll tell you.
Don't I say that? I was hoping you'd come one of these days. Is that not good? I was hoping you'd come one of these days.
Yes, indeed. Isn't it in your notes?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Where does it come?
Right
Over there,
after
right there.
good morning.
No, she says something about the thing.
We're making very good progress, Mr. Chaudhary. We had 10 minutes of conversation today.
Really?
Oh, really?
That's where it really comes from.
And history and geography. Her grammar's improving tremendously. A lot.
Not geography.
So much. No, her history, her grammar. Her grammar's improving so much. She wrote a very good essay about birds in her garden.
Really? And I see she can sing too.
Yes, and I can see, yes.
All you can say is, I see she can sing too.
I was on my way.
Well, I mean, I find it very useful to have been familiar with music, to have been a student of painting, to have studied literature, and to have, above all, to have studied film technique, mainly by looking at other people's films, mainly American films. It is possible, of course, for a director to know only direction and nothing else, so that he works with collaborators as far as music goes, or photography goes, or writing scenarios goes. He can always work with another person or several persons, but then he cannot call his films entirely his own work. He has to share the credit with others. Yes, but I was having to do other things. I had a job in an advertising agency, and when the work on the film would stop, there was no knowing when the work would be resumed, or whether it would at all be resumed, whether we will ever have any money to resume. So I had to go back to my work in advertising. But I had, of course, subconsciously, the film was always at the back of my mind. Because I'll tell you why. When I made Jalsaghar after the box office failure of Aparajit, I felt that I was making a film specifically for the Indian audience, dealing with Indian music, Indian dancing, very, very intensely Indian story. Certainly in those days I felt that this film is never going to go out of the country. But of course, even in early days, it was shown in London, and I was quite surprised by the critics have even gone so far as to say that that is their favorite film. Not just my film, but any of it. But I continue to be surprised.
Actually, the second one was not very well received in India, and it lost some money. And, well, I did it as a change, you know. And then the second one got the Venice Award. And I felt that, well, perhaps I could go on with the trilogy after all.
Pather Panchali, of course, got the award recently at the Stratford Film Festival.
Oh, yes, it has won quite a few awards, yes. It won, the first award that it won was at Cannes.
What year was that?
That was 1956, I think.
For direction?
Yes, no, it got a special Grand Prix as the best human document. Well, I was completely overwhelmed by Bicycle Thieves when I first saw it in London.
The Seeker?
Yes, absolutely. I had seen Open City before that, but it was Bicycle Thieves which really sort of opened my eyes, opened windows for me.
This was before you made any films?
Yes, I had Pather Panchali in mind even before that, but I saw Bicycle Thieves in 1950. I wouldn't say that I was influenced by Bicycle Thieves, because there were films that before that which I had liked and admired immensely, almost as much as Bicycle Thieves. Films of Flaherty, for one thing, and some of the films of John Ford, and some Renoir, like The Southerner, and some Dovzhenko. I think that they had contributions towards the ultimate evolution of my style, whatever it may be. I mean, but one is not necessarily influenced by films alone, you know. One is influenced by literature, by music, by just looking at things, absorbing impressions, and all manner of things.
হ্যাঁ, মানে একটা তো গেল যাকে কল্পবিজ্ঞানের গল্প বলা হয়, যেটা সায়েন্স ফিকশনই বলুন বা সায়েন্স ফ্যান্টাসি বলুন, সেটা তো একটা আলাদা জাতের মধ্যেই পড়ে যাচ্ছে। তবে হ্যাঁ, সাধারণ গল্পে আপনি যদি মানুষদের কথা লেখেন, বা সেখানে তো একটা বিজ্ঞানের একটা দিক তো সবসময় এসে যাচ্ছে, যেটা মনস্তত্ত্ব বলা যেতে পারে, যে মানুষের মন, বিশেষ করে আমার ছবিতে, আমার গল্পে সবসময় মানুষের মন একটা বড় ভূমিকা গ্রহণ করে। মানুষের সম্পর্ক, তাদের ব্যবহারের, কথাবার্তা, ব্যবহার, সবকিছুর মধ্যে যে একটা আমরা সত্য যেটাকে বলা যাবে, যে ট্রুথটার দিকে আমরা যেতে চেষ্টা করি।
সত্য বিজ্ঞানসম্মত হবেই।
দৈনন্দিন জীবনের যে অভিজ্ঞতা বা মানুষ চেনা জানা, এমনকি দেশ বিদেশ সম্বন্ধেও যে সমস্ত কথা লেখা হয়, বা শহর সম্বন্ধে, বা আরেকটা দিক যে মানুষের বিভিন্ন স্তরের মানুষ সম্পর্কে যে লেখা, গ্রাম সম্বন্ধে লেখা, সবসময় একটা বিজ্ঞানের দিক সেরকম ভাবে দেখতে গেলে তো সেটা থেকে যাবেই। যেটা প্রথম কথা যেটা বলেন, যে মনস্তত্ত্বের দিকটা তো থাকবেই, সেটা তো একটা বড় ব্যাপার। আর সেখানে সেই বিজ্ঞানটা নিয়ে পড়াশোনা না করা থাকলেও চলে, মানুষের অবজারভেশনের ওপরই, মানুষের পর্যবেক্ষণ ক্ষমতা, সত্যটাকে চিনে নেওয়া, এই ক্ষমতাটা তো সাহিত্যিকে থাকবে। মানে আমার তো এমনি লেখার কোনো প্রশ্নই ছিল না। আমি তো কোনোদিন যে লিখবো বা সাহিত্যিক হবো বা গল্প ভাবতে হবে, আমাকে বসে লিখতে হবে, আমি কোনোদিন ভাবিনি। আমি বিজ্ঞাপনের অফিসে কাজ করতাম, তারপর সেটা ছেড়ে ফিল্মে ঢুকলাম, ফিল্মের কাজ করছি। তখন একদিন আমার বন্ধু কবি সুভাষ মুখোপাধ্যায় হঠাৎ বললেন যে সন্দেশটাকে আবার বের করলে কেমন হয়। তো সেটা মনে ধরলো ব্যাপারটা, এবং তার 6 মাসের মধ্যেই 1961-তে সন্দেশ আমরা আবার নতুন করে বার করি। সুভাষ এবং আমি সম্পাদক ছিলাম, এবং সন্দেশ বেরোনোর পর স্বভাবতই আমার মনে হলো যে এবার একটু লিখতেই হয়তো হবে, আর কিছু না হোক সন্দেশকে ফিড করার জন্য। তা প্রথম গল্পই কিন্তু আমার বলতে পারেন বিজ্ঞান ভিত্তিক গল্প, যদিও সেটা প্রফেসর শঙ্কুর গল্প না, সেটা হচ্ছে বঙ্কুবাবুর বন্ধু। এটা আমার জীবনে প্রথম বাংলা গল্প। এবং পরে এই গল্পটা, সেটা প্রসঙ্গে যদি আসা যায়, পরে আসা যাবে, সেটা হচ্ছে এই গল্পই ভিত্তি ছিল আমার পরে আমি যখন ফিল্মের চিত্রনাট্য করি। যাই হোক, বঙ্কুবাবুর বন্ধু লেখার পর আমি 2-একটা ভূতের গল্প, এই গল্প সে গল্প লিখে, তারপর আমার মনে হলো যে এই শঙ্কু ধরনের একটা চরিত্র, ডায়েরি ফর্মটার কথা মনে হলো যে এটা হতে পারে, এবং এটা বোধ হয় সাবকনসিয়াসলি আমার খানিকটা কাজ করেছিল হেঁসরাম হুঁশিয়ারের ডায়েরি, আমার বাবার লেখা। সেটা আমার ভয়ানক একটি প্রিয় লেখা। সেটাতেই উনি কোনেন ডয়েলের লস্ট ওয়ার্ল্ড বা অজ্ঞাত জগৎকে নিয়ে একটু ঠাট্টা করেছিলেন। ওটা পরিকল্পনা আজকের না, ওটা আমার চিত্রনাট্য লেখা হয় 1967-তে, 15 বছর আগে। ওটা ইনফ্যাক্ট আমি একবার লন্ডন গিয়েছিলাম, তখন স্ট্যানলি কিউব্রিক স্পেস অডিসি তুলছেন, আর্থার ক্লার্কের সঙ্গে আমার আলাপ হয়। তার আগেই বঙ্কুবাবুর বন্ধুর ওপর ভিত্তি করে একটা ওই গপ্প না, কিন্তু ওই বাইরে থেকে স্পেসশিপ আসার ব্যাপারটা রয়েছে। একটা আমার আইডিয়া, আমার কল্পনা একটা মাথায় ছিল, পরিকল্পনা। তা আমি আর্থার ক্লার্ককে বলাতে বললো যে বাহ, একটু বেশ লাগছে, তুমি গিয়ে লেখো। তারপর আমি কলকাতায় ফিরে এসে আমি পুরো চিত্রনাট্য লিখেছিলাম। সেটা অনেক দূর এগিয়েছিল। কলাম্বিয়া কোম্পানি সেটা, আমি হলিউডে কাটিয়েছিলাম 6 সপ্তাহ। তবে আমার হয়ে যিনি মধ্যস্থতা করছিলেন তার কতগুলো গোলমালের ফলে শেষ পর্যন্ত ছবিটা হয়নি। কিন্তু তার বহু আইডিয়া, কলাম্বিয়া কোম্পানি ছবিটি করবে বলে আমার চিত্রনাট্যের বহু সাইক্লোস্টাইল মিমিওগ্রাফড কপি অন্তত 100 খানেক সেই ওদের আপিসে ছিল। তার মধ্যে থেকে 4 আনা 5 আনা 10 আনা করে আইডিয়া 2টি ছবিতে লেগে গেছে। এক হচ্ছে ক্লোজ এনকাউন্টার্স অফ দ্য থার্ড কাইন্ড, আর একটি সেই স্পিলবার্গেরই নতুন একটি ছবি হয়েছে এক্সট্রা টেরেস্ট্রিয়াল বলে, ইটি নাম দিয়ে ছবি হয়েছে। এখন এমন অবস্থায় এসছে যে আমার এলিয়েন আর করা সম্ভব না, করলে বলবে যে আমি ওর থেকে নিয়েছি, কিন্তু ব্যাপারটা আসলে উল্টো।
এই ঘটনাটা আমাদের একদমই জানা ছিল না।
এই ছবিটাকে আপনি ইংরেজিতে করবেন ভেবেছিলেন?
না, ওটা বাইলিঙ্গুয়াল ছবি ছিল। আমার একেবারে বাংলাদেশের গল্প, একটি গ্রামে একটি পদ্মপুকুরে এসে একটি স্পেসশিপ ঝপাং করে পড়ে।
Long before E.T., and my science fiction screenplay was germinated from that story, The Alien. I wrote a science fiction story called The Alien, screenplay, full screenplay, which was supposed to be financed by Columbia. That is why I spent 5 weeks in Hollywood in connection with that. It's only that I had a person who was working as a middleman who behaved peculiarly, and the idea had to be dropped. But many ideas in The Alien are in E.T., and there were mimeographed copies of my screenplay in Hollywood, hundreds of them at Columbia. Lots of people have read the screenplay. And there was a little news item in a Los Angeles paper. Some Indian boy had read the script and seen E.T., and he gave out to the press that Mr. Steven Spielberg has stolen ideas from Satyajit Ray. And Spielberg, of course, denied it. My influence has been rather limited, you see, because of my language, of the Bengali language, you see. You can show my films only in West Bengal and some of the big cities like Madras, Delhi and Bombay with English subtitles. So the influence has not been very wide. Actually, I'm more a name than I'm not known by my films at all. I think lots of... Now, thanks to the Film Society movement, my films are getting to be known in our other provinces as well. But formerly, for a long time, I was just a name outside of West Bengal.
Yeah, the villages haven't changed very much over the years. I mean, that image of women bathing in the river or the pond, as the case may be, and later on sort of coming back from the river to their houses carrying those brass pitchers filled with water, that could have happened 1,000 years ago. You find references in literature, you can see that these images in paintings of that period. So that, juxtaposed with the planes flying overhead, sort of brings you sharply back to the present, you see.
Well, actually, it's not every element really, but most of the elements, I think. In the early days, for instance, at the time of the trilogy and Opus, I was doing the screenplay. I was directing, of course, and I used to get visual ideas for sets and things like that. I did my own casting because I had very clear ideas of the kind of actors that I wanted for certain parts. I did my own casting, and then at the time of editing, I didn't operate the camera at that time, and I didn't write the music. At the time of editing also, I was there, very much there. The films were more or less, as the expression goes, cut in the camera, so there wasn't a great deal left for the editor to do, but of course I've had a very creative editor helping me. But later on, for instance, I took over operating.
Since when?
Since the time of Charulata. You see, I decided that the camera, it was through the camera that one was able to judge the action and the movement of the actors best, rather than sitting in a chair by the side. And I found it helped the actors also because I was behind the camera, you know, they couldn't see me actually, and it helped them. They felt easier. I have each character I can sort of visualize, and I look for people, for faces which conform to my visual conception of an actor. And if I find a professional who fits the part, I take a professional. If not, then I start looking around for amateur actors or non-actors, even people just whom I meet on a tram or a bus on the street.
I never wanted to repeat myself. I mean, the fact remains that immediately after Pathe Panchali, I did a sequel, Aparajito. But after that, I made a comedy, then I made a musical about a feudal landlord. Then I went back into time to the 19th century, making films like Charulata. And then I dealt with local social problems like women going out to work in Mahanagar and other films. So I have, as far as possible, tried not to repeat myself.
Well, you see, you describe a scene to them and you give them a certain length of time, like a minute and a half. And in any case, they don't like to be dictated too much. And they were all good friends on a personal level, so I didn't want to jeopardize the friendship. So I finally decided to, since I couldn't find another composer to do the kind of thing that I wanted, I decided to teach myself.
And you also began to operate the camera?
Yes. Again, you see, with a professional cameraman, what happens? It used to happen with Mitra, my cameraman. You see, he would often ask for a second take or a third take, but never give me a specific reason for the second take. I would ask him, why do you want another take? I'm perfectly willing to take another. I go for another take, but tell me why you want it. He said, no, he would hem and haw, and then sort of, he said, well, but then you can't afford this sort of thing when you're working on a 3-to-1 ratio. So I had eventually to do the operating myself, because occasionally, even a little wobbly pan won't matter if the acting is really very strong. On occasion, of course, you have to have a perfect pan or a perfect track or perfect this, perfect that. But if you have a very strong performance in a certain kind of scene where you feel that the audience won't mind a little jerk here or there, that's why I decided to operate myself for the sake of economy.
Fine. I did 10 years of advertising work before I came into films. I did the illustration for a book called Pathe Panchali. I was doing graphic designing, advertising work, book work, all sorts of things. And then I did illustration for this book, and it struck me even then that it would make quite a remarkable film. And at the same time, I was doing some illustration and book jacket designing for a new publisher. They published some of my father's books, and I have more or less kept it up. I design posters for my films, do some of the advertising campaign, occasionally design the leaflets, and have also designed the credits. And when I started making films, I almost inevitably wrote my script in the visual form, as you find here. You see, these are scenes. It's a shooting script, actually, but they're not typed. They're in little drawings with notes about the dialogue on the side. And there are also architectural things and in discussions with art directors. I find that this form helps in my discussion with the cameraman, as well as it helps me, because I always have a kind of a visual reference of the scene I'm going to shoot.
I once made a film called The Goddess, Devi. It dealt with religious dogmatism. It didn't attack religion as such. It attacked dogmatism, the extreme form of religion. But people were writing in the papers that, oh, because Mr. Ray is not a Hindu, he was a Brahmo, he's making such films against Hinduism and all that. But they are stupid people, you can't take them into account. This happens in India all the time. And people don't, we have a fairly backward audience here, I must say, in spite of the film society movement and all that. If you consider the large audience, it's a backward audience, unsophisticated audience, exposed to the commercial Hindi cinema more than anything else. And so, you face this problem, but you make the kind of films, I make the kind of films that I want to make. I make the kind of films that I enjoy making, that engages my attention, my creativity. That's all I can do.
the Academy Board of Governors has voted to award an honorary Oscar to the great Indian filmmaker Satyajit Ray. Mr. Ray has been making films for almost 4 decades. The Academy recognizes Mr. Ray's rare mastery of the art of motion pictures and of his profound humanism, which has had an indelible influence on filmmakers and audiences throughout the world. He has said that he aims to capture both what is unique in the Indian experience and that which is universal. Unfortunately, Mr. Ray is not well and cannot be with us tonight, but he is able to speak with us from his hospital room in Calcutta.
Well, it's been an extraordinary experience for me to be here tonight to receive this magnificent award, certainly the best achievement of my movie-making career. As a small schoolboy, I was terribly interested in the cinema, became a film fan, wrote to Deanna Durbin, got a reply, was delighted, wrote to Ginger Rogers, didn't get a reply. Then, of course, I got interested in the cinema as an art form, and I wrote a 12-page letter to Billy Wilder after seeing Double Indemnity. He didn't reply either. Well, there you are. But I have learned everything I've learned about the craft of cinema from the making of American films. I've been watching American films very carefully over the years, and I love them for what they entertained, and then later loved them for what they taught. So I express my gratitude to the American cinema, to the Motion Picture Association, who given me this award and who made me so proud. Thank you very, very much.
Stay tuned for Michael Douglas.